Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with your Piney podcast. Yes, I know it's been a while. Been caught up in national politics for a while now, and it's time to get back to the local. I think that's extremely important in the coming days. I've also had a request to do a video on Black Saturday, which was one of the worst forest fires in the Pine Barrens, which we'll be doing towards the end of this video. So, first, about strengthening the ties. If you're in South Jersey, I'm going to try to make this channel or this podcast, the Piney Podcast, the critical networking area for South Jersey. So if you've got links, important news for South Jersey, anything south of Trenton, basically in the Pine Barrens, try to send it to me, and I'll keep it going. Try to promote people who also do South Jersey videos and stuff. And keep in mind, this is going to be regionally focused, because I think it's going to be very important to strengthen those regional ties, to create a network of people who can get things done, who are physically closer to you. And when I mean get things done, I mean, we may have some tough times ahead. So we want to have access to our local farms, and if you need your car fixed or whatever you need, just local regular stuff, so people can kind of connect that. So if you have a business in South Jersey you want to promote or something like that, shoot me a email or a DM or whatever they call it on YouTube. Get in the comments, and I'd be happy to help it along if it's not something too insane. Because I'm trying to be the South Jersey guy. That's my deal for the Piney podcast. So let's get into some of the local news. Just briefly touching on, of course, I always update on the beer virus. The vaccine is here, and personally, I'm going to wait on the vaccine. I'm not in the danger group, but I think if you're in the danger group, you should take it. I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I think it's important that you take it if you're in danger, if you're in that danger group, especially if you have a comorbidity. I mean, and if you're older, you get the vaccine. What the hell's the difference? I don't think it can hurt you. I don't know much about it, but I mean, if you're elderly anyway, and the vaccine is going to give you cancer in 20 years, I don't think you really care about that. I think they are, exploiting the tragedy for their own political purposes. I don't think it's as bad as they say. I certainly think people under the age of 50 or 60 should be free to go about their business, but I do think they should be paying attention to the nursing homes and people with comorbidities. They should be isolating the beer virus from hospitals and stuff like that, and they're not doing it. They're wasting money. Phil Murphy has wasted money on hiring 3,000 contact tracers to call people on their phone, on their smartphones, and they don't answer, and he wonders why. It's a total joke. It's a total waste of money. I don't know if it's on purpose. I don't know if he's trying to bankrupt the state. He's borrowing money as fast as he can. I'm sure his old friends at Goldman Sachs, maybe they have connections to the guys loaning them the money. Yeah. And maybe they're loaning it at a really sweet profit rate. But, the nursing home deaths, I think, are certainly on Phil Murphy. I do. I think he had a chance to do the right thing. It was obvious. The science was obvious. I mean, people who are elderly are more at risk. Simple as that. I mean, that's a fact. I'm not stating anything that's hasn't been said by a million doctors. So you don't put beer virus patients in the homes. I mean, that's ridiculous. And look, the hospitals weren't even that full during the height of the pandemic the first time around. Now things are getting a little full, a little fuller than the previous one. But it's also the weather is a factor, and that was determined earlier on. I don't want to keep going into this because it's a long thing, but I think we know the deal. Saturday, 6,400 plus new cases, 102 more deaths. Um, he's got people locked down. Again, not a good strategy, because what the lockdown does is it cuts off places you can go. Therefore, people tend to congregate in the places that are still open in tighter groups. Yeah, you're supposed to socially distance. Have you tried socially distancing in a crowded supermarket? Sure, they limit the amount of people in there, but when you're standing in line in a deli, are people 6 feet away? Not really. Kinda, sorta. They try. It's not like people are trying to infect you or anything. They are just human beings, and they just stand there, and they're just, next thing you know, you're standing next to 3 people. You're not even paying attention. So anyhow, let me get off this stupid vaccine or whatever. Apparently, there's all kinds of 120 beer virus vaccine sites, plans to expand. So look for them locally. I'm sure there's going to be one local to you. Right now, New Jersey lists 120 sites on its Vaccine Hub website, increasing the number by 11 since last week. So this is according to NewJersey.com. So if you need a vaccine, you know where to look to get one. In other news, developers pay $110.5 million for a 117-acre South Jersey site, plan 2 new warehouses, which is good, I guess. It's on 130 and the Turnpike, and I think I kind of know where that is. I think it's near Burlington, right? It's a sign that they still got some business in this area, that they're building more warehouses. Then again, we did have that warehouse fire, it was about a year and a half ago at Deason Watson. The whole thing burned down. I don't know if those guys are connected to that. Seems like a lot of money. Seems like a huge facility already. Look at that. I mean, it's just humongous. But probably a good sign. Probably a good sign for the area. First, South Jersey Teriyaki Madness opens up in Marlton for the new year. Both a good sign and kind of a bad sign in my view. This is a chain restaurant. And good that new businesses are opening. Bad that it's a franchise, in my view. I would rather see mom and pop businesses open up, but, that anything opens up at all in South Jersey is probably a good thing. Unfortunately, I think these kinds of places will be driving the mom and pop places out of business, because you can see how slick it is. They're all ready to go. They have it all, fast fooded out. That's what local businesses need to do. I've watched one particular diner in South Jersey that I'm a pretty big fan of. I mean, they're getting hammered. The whole point of a diner is to sit down, you relax, you order whatever you want. You can get breakfast 24/7. And you don't have that anymore. It's in and out. It's in and out of restaurants, really. Nobody wants to sit down and eat them anymore. I was in a restaurant the other day, which it was a Salad Works, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll sit down and eat the salad, because they did have a few tables open, but it was just impossible. I think there were only like 4 tables. They were all full, and it was just like, I can't even sit here. They had music blasting, people coming in and out because nobody can eat inside. It's, they've destroyed the whole restaurant atmosphere. I seriously doubt you'll ever see a good restaurant until this is over. Of course, the elites, I'm sure, will get to go to restaurants, just like Gavin Newsom. He got to go to the French Laundry, do whatever the hell he want. Own property in South Jersey, help grow a maple syrup industry. Maple syrup season has begun in Stockton. In Galloway, the goal of the $410,000 3-year U.S. Agricultural Department grant is to promote awareness and production of maple syrup in both traditional and non-traditional production regions. Yeah, we're not big on maple syrup here, but I would, again, encourage you to do something like this, especially if you've got maple trees on your property. Start some maple syrup, man. I mean, this is the kind of thing that could be local. People could buy it. They would love it. You can make a little money on the side. You got to be careful in New Jersey because there's all sorts of regulations. You start making real money, then it's only permits and whatever. But a lot of people make their own wine, and my dad does that, and all kinds of things. So better to be self-sufficient, even if you just make it for yourself. right? I mean, it'll save you some money if you eat a lot of syrup. Um, Hazardous substance evacuates South Jersey High School. This was Haddon Township High School, which I didn't go to, but not too far away. And apparently somebody brought uranium into the school, and there was a freak out about it. Now, I'm not sure why people were so freaked out or why they brought uranium into the school or who did it. I would have to think it was one of the science teachers trying to, I don't know, do a science thing. That would be my guess, but then you'd have to ask, was he not aware of getting permission to do this or being careful with it? Because something must have happened. I don't know what, but apparently people freaked out and they had to evacuate the place. And there you go. Okay, now getting into today's request, Black Saturday. Black Saturday happened on April 20th, 1963. And 37 fires sparked by human beings, and this is according to NJ.com, burned 190,000 acres, killing 7 people and destroying about 400 buildings. And this is 63. So what you have to understand is South Jersey at that time was way more rural. That was 3 years before I was born. But, you know, as a kid growing up in South Jersey, the woods here have slowly been eaten away by further development. So to give you an example, I love going to Smithville, if you've ever been there. And Smithville used to be in the middle of nowhere. It used to be in the woods. Nothing was around it except the shops and stuff in Smithville. And it was a place you could hit if you cut off, jumped off the Atlantic City Expressway and went the alternate route, the back way. You could hit Smithville, do some shopping, have some lunch, and then get back on the expressway, go to the shore. But now there's a development right next to it. There's stores. There's another store, plaza, a gigantic plaza. It's enormous and way too much parking. And I've never said that, I think, about any plaza in my life. But they built it. It's one of those plazas they built. It's humongous. I don't know what they thought was going to happen there, that they would need so many parking spaces. And I can't imagine how many trees they must have torn down just to build an empty parking lot that is barely filled. I actually went on a date at the restaurant there, which is JD's Pub. And a decent pub, decent place to eat. And you can almost not notice beer virus there, because they have enough tables that if you spread out, it feels like you're in a restaurant still. So anyway, I went on this date, and there's literally nothing. I mean, it was late, so everything was closed. And so we just went for a walk in the parking lot. It was kind of a nice night. We were walking up and down the plaza. This is during the virus, still in the summertime. So, we were looking at the shops, and some of them are empty and some of them are not. But it just occurred to me while I was walking around there, this is an enormous parking lot. I mean, no lie. It must be like 200 parking spaces. And there's just never that many people in this parking lot. Never. And it's too far away from Smithville. Like, Smithville has some things. You need a parking lot that big. But they park in other places near Smithville, like basically in the dirt. And it's too far away. It's like 3 blocks away. You're not going to park all the way over there and walk all the way to Smithville. I don't think. Maybe you could, but it's just insane how many parking spaces are there. So it's not the woodsy place it was back in '63. Back in '63, that didn't exist. It was just Smithville. There was an antique auction house across the street. A couple other buildings. Leeds Point had a few buildings and a graveyard. But even the Leeds Point Plaza wasn't there until, probably the 90s, maybe the 80s. So you're talking, it's very woodsy at that time. Very woodsy. People have houses down there in '63. It's basically like a cabin in the woods. It's not like North Jersey, for those of you outside the state. So, and the woods, extended really all the way up into Long Island. just a huge region of fires that hit. And there's an article, I'll put the link in the description. Will America's worst fire disaster happen in New Jersey? Fires in the West dominate headlines, but the single most destructive blaze in U.S. history could occur in the Northeast. And there's a little mini documentary here. It's a bit hyperbolic, but this is in Rolling Stone from April 20th, 2016. Yeah, so it was like the anniversary of the fire. So it's weird. Who wrote this, by the way? Kyle Dickman. Guess I would guess he's a South Jersey resident, or a former one. So every few days in the spring, he writes, another small wildfire breaks out in the Pinelands. Well, maybe he's not from the South Jersey because he calls it the Pinelands instead of the Pine Barrens. A 1.1 million acre tract in southern New Jersey that spans 7 counties and is home to some 500,000 people. So far this year, firefighters have doused the flames before they caused any significant or at least widespread damage. One fire turned 4 mobile homes to ash. Another closed the Garden State Parkway for a few hours, but Jersey won't be so lucky. If the conditions are right, experts predict that on a dry morning in late April or May, the height of the wildfire season in the reserve, the dense forest between Philadelphia and Atlantic City would explode into a inferno that moves as fast as any out west. Well, yes and no. The thing about wildlife management, and I know something about this because I worked for a guy who actually worked for the California Wildlife Management, and I wrote scripts for videos for him, and the scripts were about clearing the underbrush on your property to avoid wildfires. And I know people who live in the Pine Barrens or Pine Barrens adjacent, and they own some basically forest, and they clear the underbrush. In fact, my dad's tract of woods, it looks like a damn golf course, but the way he treats it, he clears out everything, and you got to manage it, and the problem is, the environmentalists, ironically, they want so badly to preserve everything, but it's kind of like the same people who want so badly to feed the poor, but they don't bother to understand economics. A lot of the environmentalists don't bother to understand the environment, because in South Jersey we have a tree called the dwarf pine, and it actually thrives after a forest fire, because what happens is the dwarf pine is probably a little more resistant to fire, but in a forest fire all the big trees burn down, and the dwarf pine survives and grows because it's little. And it actually thrives in that, because with all the big trees burned away, it can get more sun and water and whatnot, and all the big trees are dead, and the dwarf pine comes back after a forest fire. And you can see that if you go around South Jersey after a forest fire. There was one, I believe it was like out on 206 a couple of years ago, and after might have been like 5 years ago, and after a few years, I was driving past it, because 206 is a route I used to use all the time. I would see, it was just black, right? Like all these dead trees, all black. The ground was black. Everything was black. But then you would see these small pine trees growing up in the middle of that, and they were green as hell, and they were just shooting up. So, I don't think. And plus, you have the fact that the Pine Barrens is different. It has a very sandy floor. People not from South Jersey don't understand this. When I went camping in another state once, and I was setting up my tent, and I was like, oh man, this is weird. There's so much grass here, and people were like, yeah, it's it's the woods, and I was just like, no, the woods is all sandy. It should be all sand. We should be like ankle deep in gray sand. That's because that's the way the Pine Barrens is. It's pine trees and sand, basically. Yeah, we have some. I mean, look, there's some underbrush and some grass, but it's, if you've ever been in the Pine Barrens, it's for me, it's a normal experience because I've lived here most of my life. But for some people, it's like, whoa, this is weird. So the Black Saturday fire, One of the reasons it stretched so far is because there were just more trees, and probably a lot less management. A lot less property owners to clear the underbrush. And not all of them do it in New Jersey, but they definitely don't do it in California. Because the environmentalists are, I think, more active out there, and I think they push the wrong thing. They're like, oh, you can't manage the underbrush, the little animals won't have a place to sleep. Like, well, the little animals won't have a place to sleep if it all burns to the ground. So you have to clear the underbrush. If you own property and it's woods, clear the damn underbrush. You got to clear it once in a while. You just, you don't have to do it every day, but you gotta do some work, or have a guy do it. I don't know if you have money. So I'll play a little bit of this mini documentary on Rolling Stone as I'm talking. Oh, maybe I shouldn't because of. Oh, that was. All right, forget it. Oh, there it is. There we go. Yeah, it's called Apocalypse in the Garden State. So you see the picture. I don't know if this is from the Garden State. I think that's from California. Yeah. So, and they got a good map. See, it's good visuals. This mini documentary, I will give it that it has very good visuals. There we go. So you can see, the region that they're talking about. It goes all the way down through New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and a little bit in New York there. And that's why the fire was so crazy. Beyond that, it's hard to find information on it. It's not a lot of information on the internet for Black Friday or Black Saturday, other than it's estimated 37 human spark fires ran through some 190,000 acres from Long Beach Island to Atlantic City, killing 7, destroying 400 buildings. And they write here, humans are the cause behind 99% of the blazes in South Jersey. In John McPhee's The Pine Barrens, the author said about the 1963 fire, and this is a real guy who's written tons of books on South Jersey. The damage to buildings was light, but only because there were so few buildings to damage. Since then, the population in the Pine Barrens has tripled, while the forest has become even thicker. Well, I'm not sure how you say that the forest has become thicker when they knock down trees all the time. And I just gave you an example of how they made a massive parking lot right in the middle of the Pine Barrens. So I guess there's more of a danger that sections of it can go up in flames. But, one of the things I do in the Pineys is when the Galloway cousins are out hunting, a lot of times they're just walking along roads and then cutting into the woods, because that's the way the Pine Barrens is. You can walk through the Pine Barrens, but if you walk in a straight line, eventually you just hit a road because, it's crisscrossed with roads all throughout. Yeah, I mean, there are sections of it. If you hit certain sections of it and walk diagonally through the square, you're going to be walking a long time. But there are a lot of places in the Pine Barrens. I would hazard a guess that it would be really hard to die of starvation in the Pine Barrens unless you were just incredibly unlucky and delirious and walking in circles. If you walk in a straight line long enough, you're gonna hit a road. You're gonna hit a civilization, a house, something, because that's just the way it's laid out. New Jersey's just not that big. I mean, it's just not that big. Look at a map. And the Pine Barrens, while, it's pretty big for New Jersey, you could fit a bunch of New Jerseys in California. You could fit a bunch of New Jerseys in, provinces in Canada, Montana, whatever. So, I mean, it seems to me this article is a bit hyperbolic, and because there's more people living near the Pine Barrens, they're going to tend to manage it better. People are going to tend to, clean up their yards and clean up their back 40s or whatever, and make sure that they're not covered in dry pine needles in the middle of the summer. They don't want the fire. So this guy, or the little mini documentary, proposes this crazy thing of building a bulwark around the entire Pine Barrens and the sections in the middle that are towns in it. That sounds incredibly unnecessary. I think what needs to happen is people need to clean up their home backyards. I mean, look, does this look like an area that could become a forest fire to you? No, it's there's a million houses here. Yeah, there are trees, but a bunch of them are far apart. And if a tree caught on fire, somebody would see it almost instantly. And we manage the forest okay here in South Jersey, better than California, that's for sure. I think the problem with California, it's just too big. It's too big. The state is broke, and they just don't manage it well. In South Jersey, I don't think we've banned burning the underbrush. They do controlled burns here still, I believe. The one thing they stopped is they cut back on animal control here, which I think is a problem now because we have so many deer and so many critters now. Like back when I was a kid, you wouldn't see a deer in my neighborhood. No way. And there was way more woods. You wouldn't see possums and that kind of thing. We got raccoons one year, but that was about it. Now I see them all the time. I see deer on the side of the road in my area. The poor things, they got nowhere to go. There's no place to go. No one's hunting them. I mean, a few people are here, but not a lot. Back in the day when I was a kid, my uncles would go hunting and I would see them. I'd be at one of my uncle's house and I'd look out in the field and I'd see 2 or 3 hunters walking along. They're going after something. And now I just don't see that. I just don't see it. But I see tons of deer, and I see dead deer on the side of the road. They got hit by cars, and it's very sad and damage the hell out of your car too. Every time I leave my brother's place, he's like, "Watch out for the deer," and it's true. I mean, and he doesn't live in the middle of the woods. I mean, there's some woods near him, but where his house is, yeah, he's got trees, but it's also a bunch of houses and roads and sidewalks and stuff. It's just not going to burn like it was in 1963. So I don't think it's a real big problem unless, we get an incredibly unique situation in the environment where the trees are just like tinder and they go up and, a bunch of people like backyard fires that get out of control. That's another thing too. In 63, more people are going to light fires in their backyard. More people are just going to have campfires and stuff. What the hell else you got to do in 1963? There's not a lot of TV. You don't have the internet. So what did people do? They went hunting and they hung out, they drank and they socialized. These things people do outside of their homes off the internet. Remember that? So there was a lot more chance. And they smoked. They smoked like crazy. So you flick a lit cigarette into a bunch of pine needles, boom, it could go right up. People don't smoke anymore. They rarely go outside. It's just not like it was in 63. When there's a fire here, sometimes it's man-made, sometimes it's not. I think 99% now would probably be extremely high number. I think they need to go back and redo it. I hope this isn't an attempt to push some crazy environmental law. We already have the Pine Barrens Commission. I believe it's called the Pine Barrens Commission or Pinelands Commission, whatever, to keep, parts of South Jersey woodsy. Problem is, of course, they carve out exceptions for rich enough people, and they hack off pieces of the Pine Barrens and they build houses and stuff, and that affects the aquifer. Yeah, I don't think they should do that either. They should be tearing down old houses and old store plazas that haven't worked, and there's going to be quite a few of them in the coming years. So I don't think they should be approving any new buildings, but it's a hell of a lot cheaper to tear down a bunch of trees than it is to tear down an old building, especially an older one that's got, materials in it that are toxic and you got to have them removed. It's way more expensive than tearing down trees. Way effing more. So in terms of Black Saturday, it was a dark day in South Jersey. Something I got to write about one of these days. Maybe I could work a Piney story in it. Certainly would make sense for the Pineys in 63 to have a big battle in a forest fire. That sounds like something that would happen in the Pineys. But thank you for the suggestion, and let me just check who gave me that suggestion. Hem Survival. Thank you, Hem. And look for more Piney podcasts in the future. And let's try to network South Jersey. Let's try to make South Jersey great and even greater.